Hey everybody, this is Gary Fong, and I just received a copy of this letter from one of my followers. It's a very unwelcome letter because it announces the construction of a cell tower nearby, and one of the things that they have to do is, of course, inform all of the nearby people that they might be impacted by this tower. What kind of tower is it? This is a 61.5 meter tall tower. It's nearly 200 feet tall. Here is a depiction of it. This tiny thing down here, that's the maintenance shack. So just imagine how large that is, and in this simulation photo, you'll see what an imposing thing this is. And I really love that kind of white stripe for effect and kind of artistic effect. Now, the thing is that we have seen, so many of us have seen cell towers popping up literally everywhere overnight. And I do say overnight because there are many trucks that are working in the middle of the night to put up these towers, seemingly as if in a hurry. I want to talk about the health effects, but I found something really, really disturbing in this letter, completely, unbelievably disturbing. And so it is this. Look down here on item number 4, a 61-meter tower owned by Parkland School Division. Owned by Parkland School Division. This is nearly a 200-foot cell tower, which is owned by a school division. Now, here's the website for Parkland School Division. I want to know, with your property tax dollars or your tax assessments, whatever, that goes to the school, how does having a 200-foot cell tower help your children in schooling? That's a mystery, and it's too late now to take down that tower because it's up there. So there's not a lot you can do about it, but what really does help is that you're aware that these things happen, because if it happened here in Alberta, it's certainly going to happen in other places, and I'm going to help you understand when these towers are about to be built so that perhaps you can halt the development if you don't like them. Now, why should we care about cell towers and health or our children? Well, here's a really interesting diagram, and I know many of you don't know this, but a 5-year-old's skull thickness is 0.5 millimeter, okay? And a 10-year-old is only 1 millimeter. So in this diagram right here, it shows how mobile phone radiation penetrates the brain. And this is why, even in Safety Code 6, Canada's de facto standard for limits on cellular radiation, it literally says in there that children have a threefold risk in one of their included reference documents. Children have a threefold factor of risk for childhood leukemia, and this is probably one of the reasons why, because their skull thickness is very, very small. So we all know that children are far more susceptible to cancer if they are susceptible to microwave radiation. So why is a school district in ownership of a tower? This is something that you might want to ask Parkland School Division, find out how that happened, maybe talk to these people here where it says our board, and find out, maybe start a lawsuit and find out exactly who got paid what to endanger the lives of our children. Is that a bold statement to make when I say endanger the lives? Well, let me go into that. So 4G LTE bands. Now, we're not talking about 5G at this point. We're talking about 4G, because the argument from most of these cell towers is that 5G is not fully activated. And I believe them, because 5G doesn't actually become very effective until the entire grid is activated, or there's a rollout of the entire thing. It's not something that you can have spottiness, because it requires a lot of antennas that all kind of like go interconnected. But let's talk about 4G, because 4G is 2.5 gigahertz. Do you know what else is 2.5 gigahertz? The microwave oven. The microwave oven is designated at the 2.4 gigahertz band specifically for microwave ovens. Now, this is before, of course, 4G LTE came out, and that's dangerous enough. Now we're going to go into 5G, which is 2.5 gigahertz to 6 gigahertz in low band, and it goes up to something like 29 or 39 gigahertz for AT&T in the United States, or something like that. Some very, very high radiation, which is dangerous for many reasons, and I'll cover perhaps in another video. Now, people go, Gary, why do you talk so much about medicine, microbiology, and things like that? What gives you the authority to do so. For those of you who find labels and such things important, I actually have a degree in pharmacology from the University of California, Santa Barbara. Pharmacology is microbiology, but also the study of the synthesis of drug systems, their side effects, and also what was very handy included in that was virology, contact transmission, and epidemiology for pandemics. So of course, it's interesting that I would have had that training to help out in a time like this, and also to take these kind of very complex things and kind of make it easier for the layperson to understand. Imagine if you took the microwave door off your microwave and turned it on and left it on all day long next to a school. That's what we're talking about. So what are the symptoms of microwave radiation while we're on the subject? So when your tissues are directly exposed to microwaves, the same violent deformations occur and cause what's known as microwave sickness. Now, if you think that this is something that's kind of like not really a thing, I'm going to show you something from the Food and Drug Administration from the United States. But people who have been exposed to high levels of microwave radiation experience a variety of symptoms, including insomnia, night sweats, and various sleep disturbances, plus more. So let's look at what the plus more says. Microwave oven radiation, but remember, we just saw that they're both at 2.4 gigahertz. So it says microwave radiation can heat body tissue the same way it heats food. Exposure to high levels of microwaves can cause a painful burn. Two areas of the body, the eyes and the testes, are particularly vulnerable to RF heating because there is relatively little blood flow in them to carry away excess heat. And so, by the way, this is from the FDA, the United States Food and Drugs Administration. This isn't some conspiracy website or something like that. It's literally from the governing body of the United States government. Now, it says, are you experiencing symptoms of exposure radiation? Who made this chart? Look right down here. United States Naval Medical Research. It was declassified in 1972. So up until 1972, they didn't allow, this was a secret document of what the symptoms of exposure to radiation are. Now let's look at what they are. Brain. And I'll just ask you this. With all these cell towers going up, have you experienced increasing headaches, dizziness, nausea, difficulty concentration, depression, anxiety, insomnia, fatigue? Fatigue is something that I'll talk about in another video on how the microwave radiation actually interrupts the oxygen transport of myoglobin in your muscles, which makes, if you wake up and you have very stiff muscles or muscle aches, that comes from microwave radiation. Tremors, muscle spasms. Muscle spasms is what's talked about in Safety Code 6. It's nerve stimulation. Okay, so tingling, also nerve stimulation. Altered reflexes, nerve stimulation. Muscle and joint pain, that's a big one. So people most often complain about migraine headaches and joint aches, leg and foot pain. Okay, down here. So now the other ones would be digestive problems, abdominal pain, dehydration, that's a misspelling. Altered sugar metabolisms. Now this is a very interesting thing, and I want to explain that. Altered sugar metabolisms. A lot of people, when they're under a lot of microwave radiation, wind up gaining weight and getting close to type 2 diabetes. And the reason that actually happens is because microwave radiation excites a molecule called a porphyrin. A porphyrin is a very translucent molecule. It's a translucent meaning that it's kind of like a glow-in-the-dark stone. When you give it light, it'll actually absorb the light and it'll retransmit it later, but it hangs on to that energy. And the thing about porphyrins is porphyrins are very, very much the electrical stimulation. We are all just electricity. And so what a porphyrin does is a porphyrin will attach to an iron molecule, which becomes heme in hemoglobin, and that affects the oxygen transport through blood around the body. If you have a porphyrin molecule that's been microwaved and it's constantly buzzing, it doesn't allow the oxygen to attach to it. So what winds up happening is people have a hard time with their oxygen intake. It comes across as hypoxia. It looks like elevation sickness. because they're actually breathing really hard, but they're not able to get enough oxygen in their bodies, and that's hypoxia. And that becomes because the porphyrin molecule has been disturbed enough so that it affects the binding to iron, which then becomes heme for hemoglobin for oxygen transport throughout the body. The way microwaves work is that it actually stimulates water molecules. You'll notice when you put a piece of paper inside a microwave and turn it on, the piece of paper won't get hot. The way that microwaves work is it stimulates and excites the water molecules inside the food, and it rubs them together so fast that it creates heat and it cooks the food from the inside. That's what happens in cellular tower exposure. So the altered sugar metabolisms, I wanted to get back to that, is because porphyrin is actually attached to the last enzyme in what's called the electron transport cycle in the mitochondria, and that affects the uptake of glucose into the cells. And when the glucose cannot come into the cells, then it winds up pooling in the blood. A lot of excess glucose in the blood is elevated glucose, which looks like insulin, starts to pour in, which also looks like type 2 diabetes. When you have a lot of sugar in the blood system, that leads to weight gains. Okay, now eyes. This is one thing I always notice when I go in a high radiation zone. Pressure in or between the eyes. One of the first things that you'll notice when you go into a high radiation zone is your eyes will feel salty, gritty, and dry. You'll have deteriorating visions, and in long-term exposure, you will form cataracts. And that's because like it said in the previous thing, when the eyeball heats up, the excitability of the water, because water in the eyes, in the vitreous humor of the eye, and in the testes does not flow very much, then it winds up pooling and getting cooked. So it's horrible for that. Heart, palpitations and arrhythmia, chest pain or pressure, low or high blood pressure. Let's talk about palpitations. Because people, they go, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I'm feeling like, ooh, my heart's racing fast. It's starting to beat really quick. That is because the heart is speeding up. We have a pacemaker, and the pacemaker is, of course, electrical, as is the signals that are coming in. Also, it stimulates the pumping of adrenaline. So you'll probably go, my gosh, I don't know why I'm so anxious, or I'm so nervous, or I'm irritable, completely out of nowhere. If you journalists, you'll say, hey, nothing happened. Why am I so ticked off? Why am I so afraid of the future? Yes, of course, there's, the lockdowns and everything like that. But you've probably experienced them before with the increasing level of microwave radiation. This is not something from a conspiracy theory site. This is literally from U.S. Naval Medical Research, and it was declassified in 1972, which means they didn't want you to see it until 1972, but now here we have it. So if you have any of these symptoms, then you could be experiencing symptoms of microwave radiation. And interesting enough, let's look at some of these things. Do they sound a little bit like maybe COVID symptoms? So there might be a correlation. Some people are, attributing it to that. But these symptoms, if you present them to a physician, they will definitely test you for COVID. So this is the rest of the TELUS document. This is the map of the notification area. It's a circulation of so-and-so. And so 1 mile radius from the tower site. Those people are notified. And now here's what I want you to know. That there is what's called a public consultation. And the deadline for this, those of you who live near that or anywhere in Alberta, freaking anywhere in Canada for that matter, you have until September 9, 2020 to be included in the formal submission package. Now let me explain to you what was effective for us here in Kelowna to stop Rogers Tower from going forward in development. There is a consultation process with the local government, and it's called concurrence. Concurrence means that when there is a development application for a tower to go up, they ask the local government if they concur or if they're going to allow it. See, local government does not have the dominion to regulate airways. That belongs to the federal government. But what the local government does have the jurisdiction to do is to limit or literally stop the placement of antennas. And that's really something that's a sore spot here in Kelowna, because one government official can stop, halt, put an embargo, subject to review, the installation of antennas. In other words, I was always right. Our mayor, Colin Basran, could put a stop to this, what's happening in Kelowna, because there's antennas going up everywhere, and people are, quite, wow, there's antennas on top of the Best Western, there's antennas on top of the Coast Capri Hotel, there's antennas going up everywhere. And, why is this happening? Maybe, is this good for our health or not? Well, obviously, we know that they're microwave antennas. Is it good for our health? Well, they operate at 2.4 gigahertz, the same as your microwave oven. So, we are seeing a lot of people. If you looked at my other YouTubes, you'll hear the pain testimonial of a tattoo artist that lives near the pilot program core in Kelowna, complaining of migraine headaches, of the inability to use his hands, of course, which is muscle stiffness and aching. And if you listen to his audio, it's literally like what it says in that U.S. Navy diagram. But now here's the thing. Under what they call the consultation process, there is concurrence. Now, if the city does not concur, like for example, if the mayor says no, or if city council says no, or the local government says no, this is the most bizarre thing. They form a mediation council of 3 parties. One would be local government. This is what we were told from development. The development person, land development here in Kelowna. It would be a representative from local government. That could be the mayor, that could be someone from council or the whole council. The second one would be the regional district, and the third one would be the utility company. So my question is, why would TELUS sit on a mediation board when there is a public dispute on the antennas? The telecommunications company should have nothing to do at all with placement of antennas in terms of what the citizens want. And for God's sakes, not a school district. A school district should not own them. So this is the level of things that we probably should be aware of so that we can activate and get our voices heard. If you like towers, then hey, keep silent and don't say anything. But if you want to stop the towers, here's what you can do. You need to make your the community needs to make its desires known. And right here it says, this is really funny, I think. It says, conclusion, contact Land Solutions LP. Now, Land Solutions is an agent for TELUS that goes around and negotiates and does scouting for locations of antennas, and then it negotiates to try to get right-of-way easements for land leases. That's not the person you want to tell, because that person wants the tower to go up. The one that's going to help a lot right now would be the manager of planning and development, Matthew Ferris, in Sangudo, Alberta. He's got his telephone number, his fax, and his email number here. This is because whatever you send to him becomes a matter of public record, as any communication to civic or government authorities. That's the person you want to contact, because an uproar from the community of we do not want this tower, and if you do this before September 9, 2020, really, really super important. Those of you who live within that 1 kilometer radius area, very important to get your needs known. And I love this because they give you this form that's literally going to be sent to the TELUS representative who can go, what the hell, I'm going to chuck this. I'm not saying that they would, but I'm saying that the better person is the one right here in the middle. Now, I've already written to Matthew Ferris to ask him what is the avenue for a community voicing its concern. One thing that you can do in community activism is you could create a petition, maybe an online petition. We had a tower here in Spears Road in Kelowna, and due to community opposition, they did an online petition. The permit application was withdrawn. In the second case, we were able to take down the third antenna that went up in the land was because we contacted the owner and told the owner of the health and problems with your property values should you allow for a 5-year lease on your land. Now, let's just say, for example, that somewhere down the road, 2 years from now, they find that these towers are incredibly toxic or whatever. That could happen, should happen, but it might happen. If you own a property with a big antenna on it, and all of a sudden it has the stigma of a grow-op or something like that, then you've got a problem selling your property or with your property values. And then, of course, not even thinking about the health effects. So in order to stop this, those of you who are within the vicinity, or all Canadians, or all people from around the world, write to Matthew Ferris and say that we are concerned with the health effects of microwave antennas for the reasons that I put here. And I think what I'll probably do is put a template letter. I just don't really like template letters a lot because they'll just add to a pile and they'll just say, someone copied and pasted this. But, if you say in your own words, hey, I've got a 4-year-old, if you, and I know that my 4-year-old has a 0.5 millimeter thickness skull and therefore is a very good candidate for glioma, which is brain cancer, as a result from the close exposure to it. I know I'm being really super articulate here, but write whatever you want or copy and paste whatever. Just get it to your dissent, get it to the government official, which is the manager of planning and development, because at that point they can do a step which is called concurrence, and they would have to say, hey, look, we had a very, very large response from the community. The consensus is no.